week's episode of Chivalrous Conversations, the podcast where we discuss literature from all around the world. Today, we are here with the great William Shakespeare and the prose fiction writer Margaret Atwood. You may recognise Shakespeare for his most famous texts, Romeo and Juliet, Macbeth and Othello.
Yes, very famous.
And not to forget Margaret's novels The Handmaid's Tale, The Blind Assassin and Bodily Harm. Today, we'll be focusing on his play, The Tempest, one of Shakespeare's last plays before he died, and Margaret's book, Hagseed, a metatextual interpretation of The Tempest. What is your, as the composer's, intended meaning conveyed in your text?
It is a culmination of my previous plays, bringing in themes that were consistent in my other works, symbolising a farewell of sorts, a final hoorah to the stage. I intended to create a metafictional text that delves into the issues of society like racism, the rights of women, and the age of exploration.
Margaret?
When I was first approached by the Hogarth Press, I was left with a variety of choices to write about, and yet I felt drawn to the Tempest, of magic, betrayal, revenge, and forgiveness, all within the eye of the storm. I felt as if my incorporation of metatext was beyond a retelling, rather an interpretation, and I wished to draw attention to all of those, like William said, issues plaguing modern society. Many scholars and students believe that these texts no longer are enduring relevance, but rather outdated texts of a world left behind. But for myself, like all authors reimagining and restudying these texts, I understand that these situations are still seen today. There are key resonances everywhere you look.
How have the social, cultural, and historical contexts and questions of value shaped their texts and their meanings?
I had used a lot of context at the time of creating the play with the age of exploration and contrast of New World versus Old World plays. I didn't give a specific location to the island, rather left it for the future scholars to vividly debate over. Is it in the Caribbean due to the connections to New World plays? Is it in the Mediterranean with the links to Old World plays? Does the shift in politics and maritime power in a society ruled by strong Christian beliefs influence the location? Perhaps no one will ever know. My society was fueled by strong religious beliefs, and I myself had created works exploring a number of religious themes. I tended to raise universal questions concerning doubt, doctrine, and spirituality in the natural world. As we all lived and feared the royalty of this period, we had no choice but to abide their religion. Therefore, my plays must include their religious themes. Secularism and individualism were hard concepts that were enforced. Socially, I had only one female character present in the play, which is a direct representation of women in society having no freedom of speech nor any say in their country.
If I may interject, William, I chose to collide with your perspective of Miranda through Anne-Marie, a strong feministic woman. Felix can see the talent that Anne-Marie holds. He could have brought out her talent. He could have taught her so much. It would have made her a career. This is also symbolism of how high Felix held himself, but as well as his control over her gender.
Thank you, Margaret. Magic was also a prevalent area of my time, with many different women being murdered through situations like being burnt at the stake or drowned due to connections with witchcraft. This is why the magic featured during the play was believed by so many to be true. Magic was a strong socially held value, as it had a large control over England, with 270 witch trials that resulted in death. Alas, Margaret, I understand that you bring in more strong women into Hagseed.
Yes, I do, William. I chose to incorporate 3 strong main female characters into Hagseed, which does not limit the background characters. My depiction of Miranda significantly dissonates from your version, as she herself is a figment of magic, one might say. While she was severely sexualized within your text, which I disapprove of, I decide that my Miranda collides with your text, and she would be more knowledgeable and powerful. Alongside Miranda, Estelle and Anne-Marie, a depiction of modern-day feminism, not allowing the males to dictate them. Anne-Marie is seen to at first seem uncomfortable being in jail surrounded by men, but through reassurance from Felix and her own strong will, rises above. She gains the respect and admiration of the inmates, proving to be a vital part of the play.
So, Margaret, how have you, as the composer, responded to The Tempest and in turn created Hagseed? And how have you represented and interpreted the characters to create your own spin on them?
I chose to interpret Miranda as a figment of Felix's mind, providing him with companionship during his years of isolation. It is not until the end of the text that he realizes that by maintaining the image of her, he is not preserving her, but rather trapping the both of them in an eternal prison. In the resonance of the ending of The Tempest, while Prosper lets go of his spirit Ariel, Felix lets go of his own spirit Miranda to begin a new life. To the elements be free, he says to her, and finally, she is. One of the most important parts of the play is this scene, as it endures relevance that if you love something, you must let it go. In relation to Ariel, there was an oblivious change in his character and the way magic affected him. Yes, I could have stuck with the stereotypical look at the feminine fairy, but rather I incorporated modern-day technology. He is a holographic projection, able to swiftly move around the stage in a mirror of the original Ariel. There are two kinds of magic, and the kind in Shakespeare's play, and the kind you see on the stage. They both deal in illusions. It's just a question of method.
What are the connections between the texts, such as the continued fascination and the universality of the ideas in Shakespeare's play?
At the time of writing my stories, I had no idea what future they held. I, like all writers, could only hope they would enjoy relevance for many years to come. Some of the main themes within my plays were ones that have been seen before, like revenge, betrayal and romance, all seen consistently throughout literature history. Margaret, why do you maintain a fascination with my text?
Well, William, I, like most others, grew up surrounded by your stories throughout school, throughout the media with movies that are based on your plays. Young children are exposed to movies like The Lion King, which resemble Hamlet, a perfect example of how you continue to enjoy relevance in modern society. The Tempest is a story not well known to many, unlike your plays Romeo and Juliet, Macbeth and Hamlet, yet I feel as if it encapsulates the audience from the beginning, a storm filled with betrayal. The themes are timeless and universal, relatable to every story in one way or another, in a consistent endurance of relevance. I believe that I've effectively taken this text and reconstructed it in a different light, creating the imagery that these themes continue to endure relevance in modern society.
How have you explored the motive of the island through the textual conversation?
I love the motive of the island. I feel as if it's a very important part of the story, providing a container of sorts that isolates the characters from the rest of the world in an enclosed space. This container allows Prospero to control from above while the others are contained within four walls, falling right into Prospero's plans. I also did not excessively describe the island's details, allowing the reader to develop their own ideas, or upon subtle descriptions, I had contrasting details. I had Caliban describe the island as the fresh springs, brine pits, barren place and fertile, in collision with Adrian's uninhabitable and almost inaccessible, once again confusing the reader and forcing them to create their own image. The island mirrors the colonisation of native lands by European settlers, especially through Prospero's control and enslavement of Caliban, a native island inhabitant. The struggle that those who were native had to face is a consistent struggle, continuing to enjoy relevance in society.
The concept of the island was a detail that I had to pay close attention to, especially when deciding on the location for the storyline. I chose the prison to represent Felix taking control of a group of men exiled and demoralized from their society, much like Caliban. Many of the characters feel a connection to Caliban due to their marginalization by society, and made the connection that many of the prisoners' incarcerations are a result of living within a society defined by its racist and colonialist past. I allowed these men the chance to revolt against those who dominate the society, the politicians, and therefore breaking the cycle of incarceration that has been forced upon thousands throughout history. The jail provides a symbol of the cruel, unjust system they are forced into. Felix assists them in confronting their past with a revolt, and yet in turn he is gaining the same opportunity to destroy Tony and Sal, regaining control of the life once destroyed by these men. In further relation to the prison, Felix himself is imprisoned in his shack. This is the extent of it, Felix muses, my island domain, my place of exile, my penance, my theatre. Mirroring Prospero's imprisonment in the island, I like to think that I've effectively characterized Miranda in a new way, purely a figment of Felix's imagination that represents his lack of sanity.
I'm afraid that's all the time we have for today, otherwise we'd be running way over schedule. Thank you both for joining me in this discussion of the Tempest and Hagseed's Textual Conversations. And thank you everyone who tuned in this week. We wouldn't be able to continue without you. See you all next week with our surprise special guest, George Orwell, to discuss the advancements of society.
Crumpets!
Poutine!